Well, now look, how many Australians can relate to this? I have a farm that's not even 2 hours from Sydney. As friends know, they ring me on the mobile and then finish up talking to themselves. No reception. Farmers take their mobile with them because if there's an accident, the mobile is their one hope of securing help. And this is true all over Australia. You may not know, but there's a thing called a universal service obligation. On the government's own website, it says, quote, Telstra is responsible for delivering the USO and must provide standard telephone services, on request to every premise in Australia within reasonable timeframes, unquote. This is a legislative and contractual obligation. Telstra are not asked to do this for nothing. On my most recent figures, Telstra were getting $297 million over 20 years. 100 million of that is your money. 18 million of it is paid by Vodafone, but they have no access to the Telstra infrastructure. Who asks Telstra to demonstrate where that money is being spent? Julian Leeser is a pretty smart cookie. He's the federal Liberal MP for the northern Sydney seat of Berowra. It is 40 kilometres from the centre of Sydney, a 40-minute drive. It's not whoop whoop. The mobile phone coverage is rubbish. He's been on about this for over a year. In the federal parliament last May, he said, Julian Leeser, quote, for 4 years I've been foolish enough to believe Telstra when they say they'll fix things. But I say to Andy Penn, the CEO of Telstra, you never fix the fundamentals. Telstra has a huge responsibility, he said, with their legacy market advantage. So if they don't discharge their responsibilities properly, they should be forced to share their infrastructure so consumers have some hope of getting the service they need. Said Julian Leeser in the parliament, I say enough is enough. Do better, Telstra. Well, now signs have gone up all around his electorate. The signs say, because nothing's improved, this mobile black spot, you can see it there, brought to you by Telstra. They're just sick of the poor coverage. 40 minutes from Sydney. And more than 1,000 residents have signed a petition. But this stuff is Australia-wide. Julian Leeser, MP, joins me. Julian, congratulations on what you're doing, but what does this universal service obligation give us?
Well, thanks for having me, Alan. Look, the universal service obligation relates to fixed line phones. That's the old phone that you used to plug into the wall that many Australians no longer have because so many of us have gone to mobile phones. And I think you're right when you point out the universal service obligation. Telstra's not listening, and I think what we need to do now is to have a universal service obligation for mobile phones too.
Go on.
Telstra says that if you can use your mobile phone, if you stand out the back of your property on a ladder and the sun's shining on the right day and the wind's blowing in the right direction and you can somehow get coverage in the backyard, that's coverage for your home. But in no one's language is that coverage. They need to replace the universal service obligation that applies to fixed line phones and apply it to the mobile phones that we use today in our world to do our business. To make
people, not everyone's with Telstra. I mean, we can't expect Vodafone and Optus to all build towers and have eyesores all over the place. Why can't Telstra be made to share its infrastructure?
Well, Telstra's got all of this legacy infrastructure that we as taxpayers pay for.
Yeah.
And so in many parts of Australia, including in my Sydney-based electorate, they are the monopoly provider, and so customers don't have any choice as to who they can go with. And look, a year ago, you're right, I've been beating up Telstra, and they said, to their credit, that they would build a couple of towers in my electorate, and they've got on with at least one of them. But I have to say that barely scratches the surface. They also said to me that they would work with me on the mobile black spot program to try and fix some of these towers. But despite the fact that my electorate is bushfire prone, and despite the fact that the government adjusted the mobile black spot program to deal with bushfire affected areas like mine, Telstra has applied for zero, I repeat that, zero towers under that program. So there are lots of people all across my electorate who are paying Telstra's bills and not getting any service.
But given that a lot of people don't have Telstra, but the provider is, say, Optus or Vodafone, why can't Telstra be made to share that infrastructure with Optus and Vodafone?
Well, in some places they do, and in some places we actually need to get new entrants into the market to build those towers because we cannot compound Telstra's monopoly position because they're a bad competitor, and without competition they're not forced to do anything. But I'm talking about areas which the economics don't stack up, and that's why we have this mobile black spot program in order to try and erect towers to give people coverage. Let me give you an example. I had a bloke call me yesterday whose daughter had severe mental health issues. And the phone must have dropped out 4 times. He said to me, look, it's so bad, I've just got to get in my car. 10 minutes later, he called me, having got in the car and was able to talk to me. He was in desperation.
This is happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. I mean, you're talking about reform. Now, I noticed you were saying no service, no bill.
That's right.
How would that work?
I think we need to legislate to ensure that for people like those in my electorate who are not getting service of their mobile phones in their homes, that they should not have to pay Telstra's bills. Because I think, or anyone's bills for that matter, because, you know, if you're getting a service, if you're not getting a service, you don't have to pay for it. That's
Just
exactly
finally
right.
then, you're talking about reform. When do you reckon your constituents and tens of thousands of people watching you now across Australia will be able to say, I have a mobile phone and it works? When?
Well, I can't answer that question, Alan, but I'm going to be working hard with my constituents and with the government to address these issues, because I think we've all had a gutful of them.
Absolutely.
And COVID and the floods and the fires remind us how important this is.
Good on you. Listen, keep in touch. Come back to me. Come back to me. I'll tell you what, I know all about it. I've got people ringing me and they finish up talking to themselves. You can't get through. Good to talk to you, Julian.
Thanks, Alan.
There is Julian Leeser, the federal MP for Berowra.